I just want to quickly say that this is actually a re-upload to the original video of the same name, due to a slight mistake that I've made in regards to the Hindenburg disaster. I've stated in my original video that this was a traumatic event in Germany, and that's the big mistake I've made right there, which I will correct in the video later on. Normally I just let little mistakes brush aside and I just use it as a learning curve, but we're talking about Led Zeppelin, a band that I love and millions of people also love, and getting that fact wrong, I just wouldn't hear the end of it, so I decided to fix it. I am an amateur, not a pro, I will admit. It's not an excuse, but we've made mistakes, and I have this guy to thank for. This lovely commenter slapped the knowledge of sense into my fucking brain. So for those who watched the original video, I do apologize, I owe up to my fuck up, and have fixed it. This definitely will be a learning curve for me. Do your research extensively so you don't piss off the majority of the fans out there that you're trying to please. Anyway, on with the video. I am back with another great album review, because why not? It's been a while since I've done one, and I've only released 2 album reviews on my channel, and I don't really want to stick with that, so let's just tackle with another one, shall we? I've stated in my Rolling Stones album review for Sticky Fingers that I really struggled trying to choose a particular album from any band, but after a while I just gave in and chose an album in which I think a lot of people would be expecting me to talk about. Here is Led Zeppelin by Led Zeppelin. Yeah. Now, unlike the other 2 albums that I've chose from Pink Floyd and Rolling Stones from their hiatus, I've decided to start with their debut album. And by looking at the album cover, I'm pretty sure most of you have seen this bloody image everywhere. It has cemented into its iconic imagery in rock and roll history, if not in music entirely. But before we get into the album itself, let's talk about the band. Led Zeppelin is a legendary rock band that has given us a new taste of music since the start of their career. From there, it was only a few years later before the Beatles decided to part ways, and opened the door for other artists that wanted to make something in the music industry. Each member has at least started in their own little band to make something for themselves. And the 4 got together and created Led Zeppelin. Starting off, we have one of the coolest and sweetest men in the entire world, Robert Plant. Plant is the frontman and provides the vocals in pretty much every one of Led Zeppelin's songs. And occasionally he also provides harmonicas in some tracks too. Many have cited Robert Plant's voice as one of the greatest rock and roll voices in rock history. Next we have Jimmy Page, who is responsible for some of the greatest guitar riffs ever in rock history. Page has played a plethora of all different kinds of guitars throughout his career. Everything from electronic, acoustic, pedal steels, you name it. Even if he was to put his fingers on the guitar would spontaneously combust in flames and he would still play a great riff. That just shows the power of what Page is capable of. Here we have John Paul Jones, and to be honest, this man really deserves much more credit as opposed to the other members. I know how most people like to shit on the bass player from time to time, but really, without Paul Jones, there wouldn't really be a whole structure of any of their songs. But he's not just responsible for playing the bass. He's also known for using keyboards and organs on certain tracks. There are a few songs within the band that I've heard that his bass riff really comes into play, and we might be able to hear some of it. Just stay tuned. And in order to complete the rock and roll image, you need at least to have a drummer. And they got one indeed, in the name of John Bonham. Responsible for pretty much every drum and percussion on every track. Bonham is known for putting so much energy into his drumming, and what makes Bonham very unique is his sense of timing and technique. He could start off in one drumming sequence and change to a different drumming sequence and still have the rhythm going. It is a bit hard for me to explain since I don't play the drums very well, if not at all, but a lot of people and other drummers out there would explain just exactly what makes John Bonham an essential drummer. I'd also advise you look at his drumming solos. One man and a set of drums. But that's pretty much all he needs just to come up with something so spectacular. He has been often cited by a lot of people that he is the greatest rock drummer in history. So you have 4 great musicians, and some of them have been regarded as one of the greatest. You think a band with this reputation would be unstoppable. Well, unfortunately, it has. In the late of 1980, the band had to disband, for the loss of their great drummer and dear friend, John Bonham. He died to asphyxiation to his own vomit, while sleeping on his bed. As it was reported Bonham was quite a heavy drinker. The loss was so great that a replacement for Bonham was pretty much unacceptable. The 3 remaining members have all agreed that they were going to discontinue, as no one really could replace John Bonham, and not just because of his great technique on the drums, He was more than that to the other members of the band. He had a good smile and was very enthusiastic about his work and his family. His son Jason Bonham has picked up the talent from his father. When Led Zeppelin have reunions, Jason Bonham would provide the drums for their performances. And that's very sweet. I really do feel for this. To appreciate their efforts, let's talk about their first album. As I've stated, most of us would pretty much have seen this image. For those who aren't history aficionados, the image shows us of a Zeppelin. Now you see where the name came from. The Zeppelin Hindenburg bursts into flames seconds after crashing onto the ground on the 6th of May 1937. George Hardy did the design of the album sleeve, and also contributed to other sleeves for the future of the band. It's very iconic that I actually have the picture frame of the album cover hanging up on my wall. There's just something about the image that just feels very mesmerizing, without sounding like an arsonist or a sadist, because as we know, this did happen and it was quite a traumatic event in Manchester Township, New Jersey. Recording Led Zeppelin took place in Olympic, London, during September and October of 1968. And on the 12th of January in 1969, Led Zeppelin gave us 9 tracks to listen to. 4 tracks on side 1 and 5 on side 2. And with that being said, let's get started to the first song of side 1. The first track on side A, we have Good Times, Bad Times, a song originally written by Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones and John Bonham, but later on Robert Plant also claimed credit to the song. The song has become the first single to be released in the US and has reached the Billboard chart of 100. This song is a good collaboration where all 4 members actually really put in their effort to making this. Obviously we have Jimmy Page shredding on the guitar for those riffs, John Bonham putting the energy and force behind the drums, Robert Plant with his charismatic voice about manhood, and John Paul Jones even has a few bass riffs in this song. Listen. Paul Jones has stated that the riff in this song is one of the most difficult ones he has ever written, but I think it really has paid off. Page had the idea to put the output from his Fender Telecaster guitar through a Leslie speaker, to create this swirling effect that we hear. The song is very upbeat and I do like the rhythm of how it goes. The song reflects of how we used to live in our young youth ages and we've made good choices and bad choices. But I suppose in the end we would like to relive those ages where it was much more simpler and much more fun. To put it lightly. A great start for the album, and of course the opening sequence in the song is pretty fucking cool. And let's not forget this is in their debut album, and we're just given the first spoonful of epic musical talent. The music and sounds coming from this song alone is enough to make me convinced that they are already at their hiatus. But I think we can all agree that there are good times and no bad times in Good Times, Bad Times. Leave you when the summer comes along. I should say that on this side we have some pretty lengthy tracks. Good Times and Bad Times is the shortest track on side A with a duration of under 3 minutes. These next 3 tracks go over 6 minutes. The next song was originally written by Anne Leonard Bredon in the late 1950s. Then Page and Plant took credit to the song, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. I don't know if I recorded this back in my Rolling Stones video, but I'm pretty sure I've stated that I do like the feeling and sound of an acoustic guitar, especially when I hear what sounds like a flamenco guitar in this song. In fact, there's quite a range of different guitars in this song. Acoustic, electric, bass, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like flamenco. Otherwise, Page just has that unholy skill to make any sound from any kind of guitar. I don't know what it is, but there's something so special hearing an acoustic solo in the beginning of a song. How it all just starts peacefully and gracefully, and then slowly builds up into this awe-inspiring masterpiece. I like the uniqueness of dull-pronged acoustic mixed with heavy rock. Folk rock, if you will, which is something that the band is going to be using a lot more in the future. Bonham once again never ceased to disappoint us in his mad drumming skills. Plant's harrowing vocals cries out across from what I can only imagine is him screaming out from a rocky desert calling out for his missus. The song in fact was originally credited to Bredon and Page, and later, like Good Times Bad Times, Plant took credit too. All those guitars, the production and digital remastering that Page had to undergo is nothing short than incredible. There's plenty to go around when listening to the whole track, and it never fails to disappoint me. And even hearing the live performances of this track is also incredible too. You took me so Here's another cover song, You Shook Me, originally written by Willie Dixon and J.B. Lenoir. The duration of the original track by Muddy Waters goes for under 3 minutes. Led Zeppelin, however, more than doubled the duration of the original track, lasting for 6.5 minutes. And there's quite a number of extended solo sessions in this track too. Paul Jones utilizes the Rhodes piano and Hammond organ, and later on we hear a Hammond organ solo piece composed by Paul Jones himself. Plant's harmonica session just adds to the epicness of this blues rock track. And he has quite the range with his vocals too. From deep low, if very charismatic, to high pitched and aggressive. Yeah. And let's not forget the backward echo technique, as some people described it, between Plant's vocals and Page's Telecaster guitar. It's just pure genius. Great communication between the two. This is just me, but I feel that John Bonham had to restrain himself a bit on the drums. Because the song was very tightly arranged, he was given strict limitations on his drum set. And here's a fun fact. AC/DC's song You Shook Me All Night Long came from the line of this chorus. You shook me all night long. The last track of side A, we have Dazed and Confused. The song is written by Jimmy Page, but was originally inspired by Jake Holmes' original song of the same name. And this one's slightly unique, as it has that mixture of folk rock and psychedelic rock. So the title's not so far-fetched. Unlike Jake Holmes' acoustic version, this one is much more heavier. Before Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page was also in a band called the Yardbirds, and the group have also performed with this piece, with Jimmy Page being the sole guitarist. The song took 2 takes to create, with Page using his Telecaster guitar and a violin bow to create this unique sound, while Plant wrote a new structure for a bluesier lyrics to the song. However, Plant was not credited to Dazed and Confused due to some contractual obligations. But really, it doesn't matter, because Plant makes up for it for his exceptional vocals. Some have described his vocals as raw and powerful with unrelenting passion. Combined with Paul Jones' bass and Bonham's drumming, the band really put in their energy to make this number. Something even Paul Jones at the time was enthusiastic about it. But whatever version you hear, from Jake Holmes, the Yardbirds, or Led Zeppelin, all 3 tracks are good in their own rights. But we are talking about Led Zeppelin, so if I have to say anything about it, a superb ending for side 1. Flipping over to side 2, we have Your Time Is Gonna Come. This song, I was blown away when I first heard of it. And they say that Paul Jones doesn't have much to contribute.
Well, listen to this!
Two takes on the Hammond organ performed by Paul Jones is just, if anything, incredible. The song was originally composed by Jim Page and John Paul Jones, but again, Robert Plant also took credit to it. But whatever the case is, the song tells us a story of an unfaithful girl who will pay the price for her deceitful ways. In this track, Page uses a Fender 12-string steel guitar, and he later stated in an interview in 1977 that he only learned how to play the steel guitar during the sessions of the track. My hat goes to Paul Jones though, because this song is unlike any other I've heard of this album so far. And again, like with acoustic solos, I also get the good feels of hearing a Hammond organ solo piece structured together as well. I feel as if this track is definitely one that needs to be listened more. It's extremely underrated. This and You Shook Me sound nearly similar, but different to their own retrospect. And it's good to start something different as opposed to hearing a guitar solo from the beginning. Why not have an organ piece? It is a marvelous track that deserves much more recognition and love to those music enthusiasts out there. Have a listen for yourself, and see how you feel. When the time does come. Right after Your Time Is About to Come, we go straight to Black Mountain's Side, an instrumental piece written entirely by Jimmy Page. The track was inspired by a traditional Irish folk song called Down by Blackwater's Side, as they sound very similar to each other. Page's tuning structure goes from D-A-D, G-A-D. Once again, we have acoustic solos, and there is 2 takes of 2 different kinds of acoustic guitars. He borrowed a Gibson J-200 acoustic guitar to perform this piece. Page is the only member from the band to perform this folk piece. However, Viram Jasani also provides the percussions that you can faintly hear within this track. It's relatively short, but all in all, it's actually quite a good one. This is a song that I could actually learn for myself too, if I really wanted to take the time for it, and I suppose I will, one day. Number 7, we have Communication Breakdown. It is one of their first original songs they had worked on, with Jimmy Page providing a guitar riff, and the rest of the band wrote the song around it. Paul Jones has said, "This is Page's riff. You can tell instantly." I should say that as I'm actually recording this, I'm finding out that the reason why Robert Plant was not credited to most of these songs, it was because of a blasted record contract. Don't you just hate those things? But like I said, later on, it's changed, and it really doesn't matter. I would like to think for their earlier works, this was one song that they thought, you know what, we could make something out of this. They've done it again with another great combination of hard rock and blues rock. And I've got a feeling that the opening to the track, we might be hearing very similar versions of it later down their future. Their communication was great, but their breakdown was extreme.
When I feel you near me, little girl, I know you are my wanted.
Led Zeppelin brings another cover album from Willie Dixon, I Can't Quit You Baby. It's a slow blues piece, and one that extends more longer than the original back in 1956 from Otis Rush. Plant delivers exceptional with his vocals once again, Page with his unmatched guitar solo riffs, Paul Jones with his rhythm and timing on the bass, and Bonham, well, I think action on his drums speak louder than words. It should be said that a lot of bands in the 60s were very influenced by blues rock. Willie Dixon is no exception. Most rhythm and blues artists have inspired rock and roll bands, and they've also provided the love back to their influences. A good song in its own right. I do, however, prefer You Shook Me over I Can't Quit You Baby, mostly because of its mixture of organ and guitar, and it has left more of an impact on me, as opposed to the other. But I will say that the band also put in their heart and effort to making this incredible piece too. The final track of the entire album, we have How Many More Times. And it is the longest track with a duration of 8 minutes and 28 seconds. I mean, holy shit. And once again, due to contract issues, Plant was not credited for this song, but the rest of the members were. It has been stated by Page that he had extracted pieces of the song during his time in the Yardbirds. And just like with Dazed and Confused, he also utilized the bowed guitar. And I have to say, I love the opening of this song. The bass solo performed by Paul Jones was just exceptional, along with Bonham keeping in time with the bass line. It may just be me, but when I hear the opening to this track, it sounds very similar to a soundtrack in Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back, in the level Snow Go. Have a listen. It's a bit of a stretch, but I can't help but feel the similarities between the two, especially in the beginning. The strong vocals provided by Plant is nevertheless phenomenal, and the extended music sessions between all of the members of the band really pays off as well. The title of the song is a slight reference to Howlin' Wolf's blues track, How Many More Years, back in 1951. It's another song in which all 4 members really pioneered and showed a tremendous amount of work to putting together this track. But just how many more times can they keep it up? And thus we have arrived at the conclusion of Led Zeppelin. The album, not the band. I can only imagine back in 1969 when people first heard the album, that they were going to hear more phenomenal songs by these 4 legendary men. I think it's one of the greatest debut starts of any rock band in history. The lyrics, the music, the album cover, the whole structure, just everything. Somehow in the beginning, these men were made to succeed, and succeed a lot more than they have bargained for. It is a great shame that their career only lasted for just over 10 years, due to the loss of their drummer. I remember one of my friends boldly stating, Led Zeppelin is quite an old band. And my response was, they're not old, they're forever young and immortalized. Jack Black is even convinced that they sold their souls to the devil to trade off for their musical talent.
Come on, guys, you know you did.
There's no other way to explain your ungodly talents.
And this was the time in which the Beatles was just about to depart. Some people have stated that Led Zeppelin has become the new hype of music ever since the Beatles have disbanded. Of course, the four had their own groups before they joined Led Zeppelin, and I think it's a good idea to listen to their previous groups and see what has influenced some of their songs to go straight into Led Zeppelin. Their album was widely acknowledged around the world, and the reviews was exceptionally phenomenal, scoring near perfects from different sources of reviews. And before I make the same mistake in my Pink Floyd video, let's thank the people behind the production. We thank their music manager Peter Grant, and music producer and engineer Glyn Johns, a childhood friend of Jimmy Page, who engineered, mixed and structured the whole album together. Thank you very much. Even though the band only lasted for over a decade, their music will forever be cemented in the history of rock, the history of music, and history in general. Thank you very much, Led Zeppelin. And to the legendary drummer of the band, John Henry Bonham, otherwise known as Bonzo, the Beast, Powerhouse, we thank you from the bottom of the abyss from our hearts for providing us with your excellent drumming skills. You have become one of the most influential drummers in rock history, and your son will carry on that tradition for many years to come. Rest in peace, good sir.